In addition to being able to apply basic fill and stroke colors to text, you can also, as we saw with objects, double-click either this fill or stroke color bar to get the fill and stroke panel. And you can apply all of the same really cool effects that you can apply to objects to text. So, for example, for this fill, right now we have it set to a solid color, which is red, but we could also choose a gradient. And if I go to edit this gradient, I could go to my second stop, make it fully opaque, and then change the color to something like this bright yellow. And so then we're going to get this fade gradient from red to yellow. I could also go to something like the stroke paint area, and right now this is set to black, but if I wanted to, I could change this to this kind of purple color. You can also change the stroke style, so I'm just going to set the stroke back to black color. You can change the width of a stroke, so maybe something like 2 is going to work better for this, and I think it really does. And you can change the join style, so where you have, for example, these corners. For example, on the corners of this N. Right now we set it to join with a meter limit of 4. If we were set that to bevel, you'll see that these corners will get cut off. But you can set these to something like rounded, and you have all of the same kind of options that you have with normal objects. So you can see that video on all the different things that you can do. You could even do something wacky like change the line style. So if you were to set this to something like these dots, your text is then going to be outlined by these dots. Just one thing you want to watch out for is when you start applying these really advanced effects, like this gradient across these letters and these sort of dotted strokes for the text, then GIMP is not going to do so well with rendering these because this is quite complex vector information and GIMP is not actually able to convert them. So if, for example, I was to go File, Save As, and we could call this something like Inkscape Fancy Text. Could save that as an SVG just like normal. But now if I take this Inkscape Fancy text and try and open it in GIMP, you get this preview, and we can again set the width to something like 1000 millimeters. But then when I click OK, if you zoom in, you'll see that our gradient came through fine. So that's good to know that you can actually keep your gradient, but the dotted outlines didn't quite come across. So you've got two options there. You can either just get over the dotted outlines, or what you could do, if I close this, you could save this as a PNG file, which is going to convert this into pixels exactly the way it looks. So if I go File, Save As, and then instead of choosing SVG, I choose Cairo PNG, and we can go Inkscape Fancy Text in pixels, and click Save. I now see that I have this PNG file on my desktop. If I drag that into GIMP, we see that we get the exact effect we want. The only problem is that it comes in with a white background, so you don't get that transparency. And because this text was quite small in Inkscape, it's come across quite small in GIMP. So if you want this to be a lot bigger, you're going to have to resize it before you save it as a PNG. But then once you're in GIMP, you can actually just do something like take your fuzzy select tool and then just select this white, and you can just click delete. And these edges didn't quite work so well. If you want to see how to do a better job of that, you can watch the selection videos in Inkscape. But just to give you an idea, you can still get this effect, but you need to first go into Inkscape, make sure that this text is going to be the size that you want it in GIMP, because you're not going to be able to enlarge it very well in there. And then you're just going to need to manually remove that background in GIMP.